The divorce papers landed on the kitchen table at 6:47 in the morning. Nnenna did not put them there. She found them when she came downstairs to make tea, still in her wrapper, still half asleep, still carrying the quiet of a woman who had not truly slept in 3 weeks. The envelope was already torn open, which meant Emeka had seen them first, which meant Emeka had left them there on purpose. She stood over the table for a long moment. Then she filled the kettle. That is the kind of woman Nnenna Okafor was, the kind who sees the grenade and still makes the tea. If you are new here, subscribe before this story takes you somewhere you cannot come back from. Because this one is going to sit in your chest. 12 years. That is how long Nnenna had been married to Emeka Okafor, a man who smiled like Sunday morning and lied like a politician on election eve. She had loved him the way only a woman who has never been loved carefully can love, completely, recklessly, with everything she had, including her savings account. She met him at a trade fair in Lagos. He was selling fabric he did not own, charming buyers with a confidence that belonged to a richer man. She was 20 years old, with a small boutique, big dreams, and a laugh that turned heads. He walked up to her stall, picked up a piece of Ankara and said, "This one looks like it was made for a woman who knows what she wants." She laughed. He stayed until she closed. They married 2 years later in a ceremony so beautiful, her mother wept from the first song to the last prayer. Emeka danced with her in the rain when the generator cut out and everyone groaned. He just grabbed her waist and said, "Let them manage. You and I don't need light." She believed him. God help her, she believed every single word. The first years were the good ones. They were poor, but they were loud with laughter. Nnenna grew the boutique from 1 room to 3. Emeka tried business after business, logistics, real estate, phone importation, and each time one fell, Nnenna's money caught him. She did not keep count. That was her first mistake. Their first daughter, Somachi, came in year 2, Adana in year 4, little Chisom in year 7. Each time Nnenna pushed a daughter into the world, she looked at Emeka's face for something: joy, wonder, love. She saw it, she just did not see what else was sitting beneath it. Mama Obi arrived in year 4, supposedly to help with Adana. She came with 2 boxes, a Bible and an agenda. She never left. The woman was not wicked in any way you could point to directly. She cooked, she prayed, she reminded you every third sentence that she was only trying to help. But help was not what Mama Obi was there for. Mama Obi was there to audit Nnenna's womb and submit a report. 3 girls, Emeka. Your father had 3 sons before he had any daughters. It is the man that determines these things, you know. Nnenna, have you been praying, really praying? Some women block their own blessings with unforgiveness. A man needs a son, not because of tradition, because of legacy. A name must continue. She said these things at the dinner table, at church, in the kitchen while Nnenna was cooking, always with a gentle hand on the arm, always with scripture nearby as a shield. Emeka never told her to stop. That should have been the sign. Not the words, the silence. A man who loves you argues with his mother on your behalf. A man who has already made a decision lets her talk. Nnenna held the marriage like it was a thing she had made with her own hands, because she had. When Emeka's logistics company collapsed in year 6, it was her boutique money that cleared his debts. When Mama Obi needed surgery for her knee, Nnenna paid without being asked. When Emeka's younger brother needed school fees in Abuja, private school, not even ordinary school, Nnenna wrote the check. Over 5 years, she would later count 8.2 million naira that had moved from her account to this family's needs. That is not counting the 3-bedroom apartment she bought in year 5, the one that only her name sat on because Emeka had a judgment against him from a business gone wrong. She thought she was building a home. She was building evidence. The first real alarm came on a Tuesday in March, 8 months before everything collapsed. Emeka came home late, not unusual, but he smelled different. Not perfume, nothing so obvious, just different, like a man who was somewhere he was comfortable. She kissed him hello, and he kissed her back half a second too quickly, the way you do when you are moving through emotion rather than meaning it. "How was your day?" she asked. "Fine, tired," he said, already walking towards the bedroom. She stood in the kitchen for a moment longer than necessary. Something cold moved through her. She did not name it yet, but she remembered it. 3 weeks later, she found a receipt in his jacket while taking it to the dry cleaner. A hotel in Victoria Island, a Friday night. That Friday, Emeka had told her he was at a conference in Ibadan. She put the receipt back in the pocket. She took the jacket to the cleaner. She came home and made dinner. Comment below. Do you think Nnenna should have confronted him right then? Let me know. And if you know someone who stayed quiet when they should have spoken, share this with them. That night, Emeka sat across from her at dinner and talked about a new business idea, something about importing solar panels. She listened. She asked questions. She laughed at the right moment. She passed him the pepper soup without being asked. And behind her eyes, she had already started to build the file. The wedding video arrived on a Wednesday. Nnenna was in the bedroom folding Chisom's school uniform when her phone buzzed on the bed. Unknown number, WhatsApp, a video, no caption, no context, just a thumbnail of a room decorated in gold and burgundy, and a man she recognized by the way he held his shoulders before she saw his face. She pressed play. Emeka was in a cream agbada, the expensive kind, the kind he had told her 3 months ago they could not afford when she asked for new shelving in the boutique. He was laughing. Seated beside him was a young woman in a red and gold Iro ambuka, her hands folded in her lap like a woman trying hard to look like she belonged somewhere. The room was full of people. There was a praise singer, there were cameras. It was a wedding. She watched the full 2 minutes and 47 seconds. She watched Emeka take the young woman's hand. She watched Mama Obi seated in the front row in an asoebi that matched the decorations, which meant Mama Obi knew long enough to plan a color scheme. She watched a man pour wine. She watched Emeka smile the smile she had believed was only for her. Then she set the phone face down on the bed and picked up Chisom's school uniform and finished folding it. The crease was perfect. She did not cry that night. She did not confront Emeka when he came home, smelling of someone else's celebration. She served him dinner. She asked about his day. She put the girls to bed one by one, kissing each of their foreheads. Somachis, then Adana's, then Chisom's small warm one that still smelled like baby even at 6 years old. Then she went to the bathroom, locked the door, sat on the edge of the bathtub, and finally let herself feel it. It was not the pain of surprise. That was the most devastating part. It was the pain of confirmation, of every small coldness, every half kiss, every dinner where he looked at his phone more than her face, every night she reached for him and he was already asleep or pretending to be. She understood now that grief is heaviest not when something dies suddenly, but when you realized it had been dying slowly and you were the only one who didn't know. She sat on that bathroom floor for 22 minutes. She counted them on the wall clock. Then she washed her face, moisturized, tied her head wrap.
Walked back to bed and lay down beside the man who had taken a second wife that Saturday while she was at home ironing school uniforms. And she closed her eyes and she slept. Because Nnenna had decided something on that bathroom floor. She was not going to explode. She was not going to beg. She was not going to become the kind of woman people pitied at church or whispered about at the market. She was going to be very, very quiet. And she was going to be extremely, devastatingly prepared. She called Adaora the next morning from the boutique. "I need you to listen to me and not react," Nnenna said. "Nnenna, you are scaring me. He married someone else last Saturday. I have the video." Silence. Then, "I'm coming to the boutique." "No, stay where you are. I don't need tears, Adaora. I need a clear head. Tell me, your cousin, the one who works at that law firm on Adeola Odeko, is she still there?" "Yes, but Nnenna, get me her number." That was a Thursday. By Friday evening, Nnenna had spoken to the lawyer, a sharp-voiced woman named Chidinma, who asked exactly the right questions and made exactly 0 sympathetic sounds, which was precisely what Nnenna needed. By the following Tuesday, Nnenna had printed bank statements going back 5 years, Transfer after transfer, school fees, hospital bills, rent, Emeka's business debt, the car she bought in his name that still had her loan attached to it. She printed the apartment title deed. She made 3 copies of everything and kept one set at the boutique, one with Adaora, one in a bag she had already started quietly packing. 8.2 million naira. That was the number Chidinma circled at the bottom of the page. This is significant, Chidinma said, especially the apartment. If it is solely in your name, it cannot be contested. It is solely in my name. Then you are not as vulnerable as you think you are. Nnenna almost laughed. Vulnerable. She had not thought of herself as vulnerable in years. What she had been was invisible, which is a different thing entirely. Invisible women are not weak, they are just unseen. And unseen women, when they finally decide to be seen, have the advantage of surprise. She went home that night and cooked Emeka his favorite, ofe onugbo with pounded yam, the kind that took 2 hours and made the whole house smell like her mother's kitchen. He came home, saw the food, and his whole face softened. "Nne," he said, and he pulled her close in the kitchen and kissed her, a real kiss this time, slow and warm, the kind that used to forgive everything before she even knew what she was forgiving. She let him hold her. She kissed him back. She rested her head against his chest and listened to his heartbeat and thought, I am going to miss this version of you, the version that only exists when you want something from me. No occasion, she said. I just felt like cooking. He believed her. Of course he believed her. He had never once considered that she was capable of this. They ate together that evening, all 5 of them, Emeka at the head of the table, Nnenna opposite, the 3 girls between them, like a bridge over water that was already rising. Somachi talked about a teacher she did not like. Adana showed them a drawing she had made. Little Chisom fell asleep before dessert, and Emeka carried her to bed himself. This big, gentle version of him that appeared in small doses, the version Nnenna had spent 12 years trying to make permanent. She watched him talk Chisom in. She stood in the doorway. You are a good father, she said, and she meant it. That was the cruelty of it. He was. In the fragments and intervals where he showed up, he was genuinely good. Men like Emeka are not monsters. That is what makes them so dangerous. Monsters you can live without grief. It is the good men who do terrible things that hollow you out. He turned and looked at her across the dark room, their daughter between them, and he smiled. We made beautiful children, Nne, he said. We did. She turned and walked back to the kitchen to finish cleaning up. The file was already at the boutique. The lawyer already had her number. The bag was already half packed under the spare room bed. 3 more days. She just needed 3 more days. Emeka came home on Saturday morning of the 3rd week with Mama Obi beside him and a confidence in his step that told Nnenna he had already constructed the version of this conversation that ended with her crying and accepting. He had rehearsed it. She could see it in the way he set his keys down too carefully and cleared his throat before he even sat. Mama Obi sat first, folded her hands. Her face had that particular arrangement, sorrow mixed with righteousness, that she reserved for moments when she was about to wound you and call it love. Emeka sat across from Nnenna. He looked at the table. There is something I need to tell you, he started. I know, Nnenna said. He looked up. I know about Ifeoma. I know about the wedding. I have known for 3 weeks. The color shifted in his face. Mama Obi's hand tightened in her lap. Nnenna, Emeka started. I am not finished. Her voice was even, calm, terrifyingly so. She reached under the table and placed the folder on top of it. Sit down, Emeka, both of you, because I have been waiting a long time to say what I am about to say, and I will not be interrupted. The folder sat between them like a verdict. Emeka stared at it. Mama Obi's eyes moved from the folder to Nnenna's face, searching for the crack, the trembling lip, the swollen eyes of a woman coming apart. She found none of those things. What she found instead was something that made her shift in her seat, a stillness that did not belong to a broken woman. It belonged to one who had already won. What is this? Emeka asked. Open it, Nnenna said. He did not move. So she opened it herself. She turned the first page toward him, 5 years of bank statements, transfer by transfer, every amount highlighted in yellow. His name appeared on nearly every line. His mother's hospital bills, his brother's school fees, the rent for this very house for 4 consecutive years while his logistics company was bleeding, and she said nothing, asked for nothing, kept cooking and smiling and showing up. 8.2 million naira. That was the number Chidima circled at the bottom of the page. Money is not everything, Nnenna. Marriage is not a business transaction. Mama Obi found her voice first. You are right, Nnenna said, and she looked at the older woman with a steadiness that silenced her immediately. Marriage is not a business transaction, but you treated it like one the moment you sat in my home, ate my food, let me pay for your surgeries, and then went behind my back to find my husband another wife because my womb did not produce the product you ordered. So do not speak to me about what marriage is. Mama Obi's mouth closed. Emeka put his hand flat on the table. Nnenna, I know this looks bad. It does not look like anything, Emeka, Nnenna said. She turned another page. The apartment deed. His name was nowhere on it, just hers. Nnenna Adaeze Okafor, sole owner, dated 7 years prior. This apartment is mine. I bought it. My name is the only name on this document. When I leave today, I am not leaving my home, I am leaving yours. Leave? His voice broke on the word, and for a moment, just a moment, she saw it. The panic, the realization arriving too late, the way it always does for people who mistake patience for permanence. Nnenna, you cannot just... The children go where I go. She said it simply, not as a threat, as a fact, the way you state the direction of the sun. Somachi, Adana, and Chisom have never spent a night without me. They will not start now.
You cannot take my children from me. I am not taking them from you, she closed the folder. I am taking them with me. There is a difference. You can see them, you can call them, you can be their father, Emeka, which when you choose to be, you are good at. But they will live with me in my apartment, the one you have never once offered to help pay for. Mama Obi tried again. Her voice had lost its scripture now, lost its gentleness. What was left was something raw. You think you are the only woman who has ever been in this situation. You think you are special. This is life. This is how it has always been done. You accept, you adjust, you... I quit. 2 words. Nnenna said them the way you close a book you have finished. Not with anger, with finality. I quit, she said again, softer this time, almost to herself. I quit adjusting, I quit accepting, I quit shrinking myself to fit inside a space that was never big enough for everything I am. I quit. Emeka stood up. His chair scraped the floor. She had seen him angry before, loud angry, door slamming angry, but this was different. This was desperate angry, which is more dangerous and also more honest. His eyes were wet. 12 years, Nnenna, 12 years, and you are going to walk out over this? She looked at him for a long time. At the jaw she had kissed 1,000 times, at the hands that had held her through 2 miscarriages nobody else knew about, at the man she had loved so completely she had confused his needs for her own for a decade. I am not walking out over this, she said quietly. I am walking out because of everything that came before this. This, she gestured at the folder, at the silence, at the whole collapsed architecture of their marriage. This is just the door. She stood. She smoothed her blouse. She picked up her bag from the chair beside her, already packed, already in the room, because Nnenna had stopped being careless 3 weeks ago. Adaora is outside with the girls. I said goodbye to them this morning. I did not make it dramatic because they are children and they do not need to carry our wreckage. Emeka stepped toward her. Please, his voice was barely above a whisper. Nnenna, please, I made a mistake. I was weak. I listened to, I can fix this. Tell me how to fix this. She stopped. She turned and looked at him, really looked, the way she had not allowed herself to in months because looking hurt too much.
She saw the boy he had been at that trade fair. She saw the man who grabbed her waist in a blackout and made the darkness feel like a dance floor. She saw every version of him she had ever loved. "You cannot fix this, Emeka," she said. "Not because I am unforgiving, but because I am finally full. I have been empty for so long, running on what this marriage used to be instead of what it became, and I am full now, full of my own life, full of my own worth. There is no room left for this." She walked to the door. Her hand was on the handle. "Mama Obi," she said without turning around, "I paid for your knee surgery. I paid for 3 years of your diabetes medication. I funded your grandson's education. I did all of that without being asked and without complaint because I believed this family was mine." A pause. It was a generous thing to do for someone else's family. Then she opened the door and walked out into the morning. The sun was high and ordinary. Birds were doing what birds do. The street looked exactly the same as it always had, and Nnenna found that strange, that the world outside did not know or care that something enormous had just happened inside that house. The jacaranda tree by the gate was still purple. A hawker was still pushing a cart of plantain. Life was simply continuing, indifferent and beautiful. Adaora was parked across the road. The girls were in the back seat. Somachi with her earphones, Adana reading, little Chisom already asleep against the window. Nnenna stood on the pavement for a moment and just looked at them through the glass. 3 daughters, 3 entire futures sitting in the back of a Camry. Everything she had ever needed, already assembled, already hers. Adaora got out of the car. She did not say anything. She just opened her arms and Nnenna walked into them and held on for exactly 5 seconds, because that was all she allowed herself. 5 seconds. And then she straightened, wiped her face with the back of her hand and got in the passenger seat. "Drive," she said. Adaora drove. 3 months later, Nnenna's boutique had a second branch. She hired 2 staff and a part-time accountant. She repainted the apartment, deep green in the living room, the color she had always wanted, but Emeka said was too loud. She bought herself a record player and played Onyeka Onwenu on Sunday mornings while the girls ate breakfast and the curtains moved in the breeze and the whole flat smelled like akara and possibility. Emeka's solar panel business never got off the ground. Without Nnenna's quiet financial padding, the gaps showed quickly. 2 of his major clients did not renew. Word travels in business circles like it travels everywhere, fast and unforgiving. Mama Obi returned to the village. The house that she had presided over for 8 years was no longer the house she had known. The woman who ran it was gone. What remained was a man who had everything he was told he needed, a son on the way, a compliant second wife, his mother's blessing, and somehow still looked every evening when he came home like a man searching for something he could not name. Ifeoma got a title. She also got the debt, the silence, and a man whose confidence had been borrowed from a woman who had taken it back. On the last Sunday of November, Nnenna sat on her balcony with a cup of tea while the girls played inside. She could hear Somachi arguing with Adana about something minor and important. She could hear Chisom's small feet on the tiles. She tilted her face up to the afternoon sun and closed her eyes and stayed there breathing, just breathing, until the tightness that had carried for 12 years loosened another degree. She thought about what Adaora had said to her the week before over wine and jollof rice. "You know what the most radical thing you did was? You didn't make it about him. You made it about you." And she had sat with that for days, because it was true. She had not left Emeka to punish him. She had not walked out to win. She had walked out because staying would have cost her the one thing nobody had ever tried to steal outright. Not because they didn't want it, but because she had been giving it away for free for years. Her sense of her own value, her knowledge that she was enough, that she had always been enough, that no amount of sons or second wives or scripture-quoting mothers-in-law could make her less than what she was. She was Nnenna Adaizi. She had built 2 businesses, raised 3 daughters, held a family together with her bare hands for a decade, and walked away from it all without raising her voice. That is not a woman who lost. That is a woman who finally, at 32 years old, decided to win for herself. If this story moved you, like this video and subscribe. New stories drop every week and you do not want to miss what is coming next. Drop a comment and tell us, where are you watching from? And to every woman who saw herself in Nnenna today, we see you. Share this with someone who needs it.